Hello and welcome to the Iowa Ideas bonus track discussing recruiting of young athletes and youth sports in general. I'm J.R. Ogden. I'm sports editor at the Gazette. And with me are some outstanding advocates for youth sports from Iowa uh, who work in this field. I got Tom Keating, the executive director of the Iowa High School Athletic Association and a former Hall of Fame volleyball coach, former UNI and NFL player called Carter Schultz, the general manager of DI Sports Training in Des Moines, and director of football operations for Apex Academy, and Jim Miller, the founder and president of Youth Sports Foundation. Welcome, gentlemen. If you could kind of expand on your bios, I guess, on who you are and your background in youth sports. Tom, we can start with you.
Thanks, JR. As the executive director of the Iowa High School Athletic Association, I'm the leader of the organization that oversees all boys high school sports in Iowa. And I've been in this role for 7 years and was on the board for 10 years prior to that. Previously a teacher, coach, athletic director, and principal, not all at the same time. And so I've had the good fortune of being able to be involved with student athletes in a lot of capacities.
Carter?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I grew up in Iowa. I was involved in the Youth Sports Foundation playing. I had my own playing career, played at UNI, played in the NFL for 3 or 4 years with the Browns, the Panthers, and the Vikings. And now when I decided to retire, I turned that into being involved with youth athletes from, ages 7 to 18 to college athletes. Now I run my own business in Des Moines. D1 Des Moines works with athleticism training of all sports, and then Apex Academy itself focuses more on the football side of things. So that's what I've been doing the last 5 years.
And Jim?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jim Miller. I started in the Y programs out of college. I was a youth director at a Y, and then 30 years ago decided to start the Youth Sports Foundation to give kids the opportunity and the means to participate in some sports programs that maybe the bigger cities were getting into and the rural communities were not having. That was our main goal and mission. Coached assistant high school football coach for 20 plus years. Coached a lot of youth sports as well. So happy to be here.
Good. I'm glad to have you guys. Thank you very much. We can go ahead and get started. We sent you around some questions we had earlier in the week. We had some questions that came up on the actual program. I think we can start with that. I know we do want to kind of go off in a different direction a little bit later, maybe, and talk about just youth sports in general. I think I looked it up today, and youth sports is a $40 billion industry, I guess, and it's growing. And they're talking it could be even bigger than that in 5 or 10 years. And so I think this is a really good topic to get into. And of course, we've got the whole thing with colleges now paying athletes, NIL still there, and the youth, how that trickles down into the youth thing. So. Are we in a good place with youth sports right now?
I think we are and we aren't. I think the negative side to where we're at, what I see in my organization, the parents are more concerned. That's just my opinion about their kid getting an NIL deal and a scholarship than just playing the sports and having fun and moving on to another sport after the season's done. It seems like what I deal with are these parents that are going to, they're going to get their kid at 6 or 7 into one sport, have them play it and all year round. When I talk to parents, the first comment is, man, I hope they get that college scholarship. And it's not about academics. It's athletic. They want this athletic scholarship because there's money involved with it. So that's what I'm seeing, the negative side when it comes to where we're at right now with all the pay athletes in college. I'm not disagreeing that they shouldn't get paid, but it trickling down. Seems like the parents are more concerned about the money side rather than the fun side at youth sports.
I'd echo that sentiment. Like, I think the positives are I think there's more opportunities in youth sports now than there ever has been. There's clubs for everything. There's so many options every time of the year. Not only in like a big city like Des Moines, I think rurally, I think most cities have those youth sport programs that are in their area, but I do think youth sports has gotten so big now that there's people doing it for the wrong reasons. There's coaches that are ruining it for players, when they care more about wins or overall and how it benefits them in their organization than it does for like the kids having fun, the kids having opportunities to develop within those games, and then coaches telling kids over parents, hey, you should just do this sport. You should just come with me in my organization. When really, like from the club perspective, it should just be an additive. It shouldn't be an end all be all. And so I'd say that's kind of the negative of where we are in youth sports.
Thanks, Carter. I think that's a great perspective. And, being the guy in the group who unfortunately has been able to see firsthand the evolution of all of this, growing up in Philly, sorry, Carter, go Birds. But growing up in Philly and, my off season was a ball on an asphalt court or a pickup game, at the sand lot or whatever. And very little organized sport outside of the season, to my players early in my career who had an opportunity maybe to do some local tournaments in the off season, and my sons, my oldest being in that same realm, and then my youngest who came along a little bit later than that, really having the opportunity in a very organized fashion and in a multiple level fashion of, elite all the way down to participate and just work on it. So I've seen that evolution, and with that evolution, I think has come exactly, Carter, what you're talking about, and Jim, what you referred to. And I think it's a matter of people are, parents sometimes and coaches. It's the adults we are counting on adults, right, in this realm. And some adults are focused more on outcomes than they are on process. And so those outcomes are winning and what's in it for my kid. Are they going to, I've got my third and fourth grader in so they could make the high school team. And then when they're on the high school team, I have them doing these things so they'll be all conference or all state and have an opportunity to have a college opportunity as well. And, it used to be college scholarship, but that's not enough anymore. There's NIL. And when I tell people, when I played back at Simpson back in the day, my NIL was a 50% off coupon to Bishop's Buffet, so there's a lot. A lot came in defense of parents, in defense of other adults who are in charge of these things. A lot came at us in a very short period of time. The world changed dramatically, very quickly. And JR, to your point, I appreciate the figure you gave, and I found another that says that youth sports is a $92 billion economic impact. My position is, I think restaurants and the hotel industry would crash if youth sports went away. Now, this stuff's not going away. It's just a matter of us as adults being able to be the ones who keep perspective. So thank you. Sorry, that was a little longer answer.
No, you're fine. And I go back because, in my field, we've been, and Tom, you Carter, maybe not, you're a young guy, but, we've been dealing with parents in sports for years. I know you have, Tom, as a coach and as an administrator. And I know that's always been scholarship was always the thing, but now it's like you say, it's so much more than that. They're looking at, okay, how much money can where can I send my kid, and how much money is he or she going to get when they get there? And that's, and Jim, you talked a little bit about it, does it take some of the fun out of participating in sports?
I think it does when the coaches, like what Tom was saying, when the coaches put so much pressure, and the parents, on these young athletes to excel at a very high level. when they're 11, 12 years old, and they want to go out and play the game and have fun on a Sunday when we do, we got 10,000 kids playing football right now across the state. And we want them to play their 6-game schedule and move on to the next sport. We see it. I see it on Sundays where we've got some coaches who are putting a lot of pressure on young kids to not make mistakes. And as I tell my coaches, this is the level you make mistakes. This is a level you're always learning. I'm sure Carter learned in high school, college, and pro level. And these kids need a chance to fail and learn and not have so much pressure put on them. So they love to play, and I think competition's good at any level. But like the parents and the coaches have to allow the kids, their age group, to have that competition. Where does it end? They make mistakes, it's okay. Don't put so much pressure on them.
All right. I agree. And I think you always got to keep it in the perspective of what does the athlete want. I don't think at 11 or 12 athletes can probably say, they say they want to play at the next level. I hear that a lot from kids, but obviously there's a lot that has to be sacrificed. And I would say as parents and coaches, you have to continually check on those kids and make sure that while they're doing it, it shouldn't be business like at that age. And I think this gets into another one of the questions that we'll pose is how young is too young to start that recruiting process. And I think anything before freshman year is pretty crazy because kids are going through changes, just with the complexities of recruiting and NIL now. It's like, this kid could really want to play at the next level, but some things genetically might not add up, until they're freshman or sophomore. So there's really no reason he should be thinking about it until those things get sorted out. Because nature, you can't really control nature if you don't end up being a certain size. You know what I mean? So you could have eliminated all the fun that you could have had in middle school, trying all the sports, playing all the sports, and having fun with your buddies by thinking that way. And then, ultimately it might not work out for you. I think you should continue to look at why sports are great, regardless of the outcome later. If you go to play at the next level, it's the values you're getting taught. You know what I mean? Like discipline, commitment, hard work, teamwork. Takes you really far in life in general, no matter the field you're in. I have this conversation with parents a lot of the time, like, hey, let's not get focused on this too early. Let's just have them kind of what Tom was saying about the process, being about the process rather than the outcome. So that's my thoughts on that.
And Carter, you better than anyone on this panel know what it takes to get to that level and what it's like at that. It's one thing to try to get there, and then what it's like once you're there, and what it took to get there is something that's in your experience, Bank, and you being able to share that with parents. And sometimes we don't want to be dream crushers, but sometimes it's at age 13 it's really hard to predict that. But if you want to know, at age 13, the average NFL player was this big, could run this fast, could jump this high, and could do these things. And your child is here, but would you like to reassess your goals? But that's not always, it's not what they want to hear. And they hope is not a strategy, right? But that's what a lot of parents bank on, is that, and the sheer percentages, as you know, Carter. I mean, a guy like you, how can we not admire a guy like you coming out of Chipola, Iowa, and making it to the NFL? That is the exception, not the rule. And what you had to do, not only your own physical makeup and your own physical abilities, but the work that you had to do. The number of people who are willing to put that in. Mom, you can't even get Junior to make his bed. How is that person ever going to be able to be disciplined enough to do what it takes to get to that level?
Yeah.
I do think that's lost on a lot of people is the hard work it takes to get to that level. Really any level. I mean, if moving up in just in your age groups, you can't just stop working. You can't rely on talent alone. You know, and we always used to say that. I mean, we all grew up with kids that were super talented but never worked that hard, and eventually that catches up with you. So, I mean, I think it is part of the problem too. So let's talk about that, Carter. You brought it up. That was, I guess, what this whole thing is about. And if anybody listening wants to send a question to us, feel free to. But what is too young? I mean, you said freshman year is. Are we hearing of athletes actually being recruited younger than that, or is that kind of what we're seeing, or are we seeing more of that? Jim, maybe you've got you work a lot with a lot of the youth of maybe so Carter does too. But what are you seeing?
Well, what I'm seeing is I actually last November had a recruiting agent come to me, get a hold of me, and wanted names of all of our athletes, which we do not share. But he's telling me that he is starting to put files together for kids as young as 10 years old for their parents. So there are recruiting agents out there, and there are parents out there who are paying these guys to start building a file on their kids. When he told me that, I had just about flipped, because as with Carter, and I think Tom would agree, to me, below the freshman year of high school, these kids do not need to be recruited. But you do hear occasionally an eighth grader has already committed to a college, and it's like, how does that happen? But yeah, I mean, I've experienced it. I didn't even know that there was a recruiting company in Iowa, and the gentleman called and he's like, listen, I got kids as young as 10 that I'm starting to put files together for their parents. So yeah, I've seen it. Yeah, it's not good, in my opinion.
I think you see outliers. You know what I mean? There's definitely eighth graders that are maybe more mature that can start getting interest. I don't know. I mean, regardless if you get an offer as an eighth grader, you can't commit. You can't go to college anyway. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
besides those outliers, I mean, I've talked to many college coaches. You know what I mean? And they're not even looking at the class of, for example, like the class of 2030 right now, which would be eighth graders. They're not looking at the class. They're focused on class of 26, 27, 28, maybe. But besides those outliers, there's no need to think about it. You should be thinking about development. You should be thinking about what happens by the time I'm a junior or a senior. Am I college quality of athlete and whatever sport? That could be football, that could be basketball. And I think this goes back to youth sports, just sports in general being a business, in that, well, why wouldn't you start a recruiting service if people are going to pay for it? And you prey on parents that unfortunately don't know. This landscape is confusing for a lot of people because it's new with NIL, especially too. But recruiting has changed because of NAL, because of the roster limit to the FBS level. It's kind of a trickle down effect because now the FCS, because of the roster limit, is kind of like low level FBS in my opinion. And so I'm just speaking from the football perspective. Like, you're going to get parents to pay because they don't know what they don't know if they don't have someone in their corner giving them good advice. Like, I don't see 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds. I think also social media influences it. You see personalities on social media. Like, I'll use one for example that kids should do know. I think is Baby Gronk. And this kid was getting marketed like crazy, saying I'm getting offers here, offers there, stuff like that makes parents think that they're like behind the curve when in reality they're not.
Right. Yeah, I think, to me, it's always about be where your feet are, right? I'm a I'm a seventh grader. Be a seventh grader. Be a teammate. Be a friend. Be a kid who learns how to work hard. And and I think, to be honest, most kids, and I think Carter, you said it earlier, most kids are there. They want to be where their feet are. It's the adults that are trying to push them away from that reality, and look way down the road at something that's very unpredictable, and also, there's such limited opportunity. And to Carter's point, if we're getting back to when is too early, I think Kevin White, who's a great friend of mine, and JR, you maybe remember Kevin. He was the AD at Loras College and just retired about 2 years ago as the AD at Duke. And Kevin and I had long conversations about this a couple of months ago when I was down at his house, and about the portal and how it's changed things, and NIL, how it's changed things dramatically. That the number of high school kids that are getting recruited is shrinking, because I'm going to schedule a school like maybe a directional school as a Division I football team. I'm going to play them, and a couple of their players are trying out for my team when we play them. I may get to see some of those guys, and for me to bring in somebody that's already got collegiate experience through the portal might be a better option than going right to high school. That doesn't mean that high school isn't being recruited, but I don't think it is at the level that maybe it used to be. So that piece is added. But again, this whole idea of, I think, and maybe I'm wrong. I have two beliefs of watching youth sports, high school sports, and being in the role I'm in right now. If you're a D1 athlete, we should be able to tell that on the field in high school. I mean, you're a different cat, right? I mean, that you are at a level that everybody can notice. The second piece of that is that if you're good enough, they're going to find you. You don't need to hire somebody that's going to go promote you. That is not going to be the difference in whether you're going to Alabama or not. They're going to find you. They're going to know who you are. Now, they may not know who you are in seventh grade, but by the time you're a junior or senior in high school, they're going to know who you are. Maybe you've gone to some of their camps, or maybe your assistant coaches saw you somewhere when they were watching somebody else. But they know what they're looking for. And I can't imagine, Carter, you would probably know, Jim, maybe you do as well. I can't imagine how many, MP4 files recruiting coaches are getting every week from people, saying you should look at me, and here's my huddle highlights. It's just always looking ahead instead of here's where I am right now and here's what I should focus on.
Yeah, I mean, I think kids get a lot of advice too, like almost down to an exact science and how to promote themselves on social media and everything now. But it's like what you said, recruiting for high school has become harder because of the number of spots via the transfer portal, and it's just a very changing landscape.
And how about show me your highlights of missing a block?
Yeah. Right.
Those aren't
It's
on the
still
highlights.
relationships with like your high school coaches and their relationships to college coaches in film in general, like not just the highlights, because the coaches at college are gonna get the whole thing. That is still the end all be all. That's the cream of the crop, the film in terms of recruiting. And so, football is a little different in comparison to like baseball, basketball, volleyball, where club games matter more because it's the full game. There's no club football right now in Iowa and in the nation really. It's 7-on-7 is kind of the next closest thing. But I mean, I've talked to many college coaches. That's not that's not real football. Put the pads on, the film that still matters, and so
We talked about the role of parents, and sometimes parents get in the way and have expectations maybe aren't realistic, or maybe their focus is wrong. I guess maybe it's the best way to say it. What about coaches? I mean, especially at the youth level, sometimes you're getting a parent that might be interested in coach. Sometimes you're getting people who are aspiring to be coaches, or maybe at a higher level themselves. How important is having, or how important role does the coach play for youth sports?
Well, the coach's role is very important. We find out that unfortunately, some of the coaches that we get, they feel like they're coaching college football or pro football. I mean, this is like their top dog. Maybe they're living through the kids out on the field, maybe something that they couldn't do. We just need the coaches to, I tell them, you guys are teachers. You're teachers first, especially at the youth level. I think all levels. But when we have our coaches meeting, I tell them, you're a teacher first, and you got to teach the kids how to block, tackle, pass, catch, all that stuff, how to be good winners and how to be good losers, because they're not going to win every game. And, and I tell them, if you're a good coach, you're a good coach when that fifth grader sees you when he's a senior and he still refers to you as coach. If he refers to you as coach, then you've done something well. Okay. You made a difference in that young person's life. When that kid sees you as a senior and walks by and does not say anything to you, then you were not a good youth coach to that young man, because when they see their youth coach, they're excited to see him. But we just need coaches to realize at our level, you're a teacher and you just want to get into the junior high or the high school level. We have no championships in YSF, none. So you're playing 6 games and then it's over. So why does it matter? Winning and losing is important as far as to see where your teaching level went, and that competition has to be there. But we really, they have to understand what their role is at the youth level.
Yeah, I'll speak from my perspective of the coaches that affected me in my life and my journey. High school, youth-wise, high school, college, and pro, I had at least 1 or 2 that made an absolutely life-changing effect on me. And so that's kind of the approach that, I take myself and any coach that I bring into the organization, or just coaches I like being around. Like, you just don't realize the impact you have on some of these youth kids. The leadership and mentorship is your responsibility whether you want it or not, is there. Teaching them good life skills like, Jim was talking about, how to be a good winner, a graceful winner, loser, how to handle adversity, and how to be a good teammate. I think, um, I think coaches need to take on that responsibility head on and, put yourself in each player's perspective. How would you feel? You know what I mean? I'm looking at every player that I'm with like that was me at the time. How would I like to be coached in this moment? And then, it's a difficult relationship whether with the parents as well. Are the parents it's a tough line to walk because, if you have a bad coach and the parents are like, "Hey, don't listen to your coaches." But, in the ideal sense, you want coaches or sorry, you want parents that support the coaches, but then the coaches have to make sure that they are upholding that trust that the parents have placed in
Mhm. Well stated, both Jim and Carter. I think trust is a big word. You're entrusting your most precious people in your life, your kids, to somebody else, and you're releasing them to that experience. And I've had to share with parents that it is important to release, right? If you're gonna release them, let them go.
Yeah, exactly.
And don't try to insert yourself into that role when it's somebody else's. But I think even the best coaches and all of us played at some level, and obviously Carter, you've played at the highest level, and even at that highest level, the best coaches see what they're doing as a vehicle, not the be all end all. It's a vehicle to help folks become better people, and more equipped for life. I always felt like, volleyball, it was great. I loved coaching volleyball. I loved the sport. I loved what I could do in terms of coaching. But at the end of the day, it was about helping prepare those young women for life. And, there are times they're going to need to be competitive. There are times they're going to need to be compassionate. There are times where they're going to need to be good teammates. There are times where they're going to have to deal with adversity and pick themselves up and move on. And that was the most important part of it. And when you get folks who put all of that aside and just focus on the scoreboard, that gets a little dangerous, and it can go south in a hurry. But I think that's an important piece. So I would tell my seventh grade coach, when I was a varsity coach at Waller back in the day, I tell the seventh grade coaches, your measure for success is how many kids that are seventh graders go out for eighth grade volleyball, and second, how many of those kids who go out for eighth grade volleyball have the skill set now to be successful eighth grade volleyball players, and then the eighth grade, on to ninth grade, et cetera. Folks used to ask me when I was an AD about running off-season programs. Can we run a Little Saints program? Can we run a Little Eagles program? And my answer always was, sure, but don't cut. Don't be cutting fifth graders and saying that these kids are fit for the next level and these kids are not. Too early to be sorting things out. But I think sometimes that's what people want to get to is let's get the most elite kids at the youngest age, and yeah, those kids will top out at about 5'6". How's that going to work out for you in high school? That'll be good. So anyway, no, thanks for the opportunity on that one. I think it's critical, and at the end of the day, parents should always have their kids' best interests at heart. So release them to somebody you can trust. Release them to somebody who has proven that they're about the kids and they're not about the wins and losses.
I think that's, I told you guys in an email that, I'm going through my second phase with grandkids now, and I've got hockey players, dancers, volleyball players. I'm experiencing sports I've never experienced before, but yeah, I do pay attention what the coaches interact, how they interact with their troops. I haven't seen anybody get cut. I haven't seen any bad situations now. So hopefully, I think there's a lot of that progressing, that coaches understand that you said, Jim, that they are teachers first, and you hear some of the best coaches in college say, "I'm a teacher. I'm here to teach," and they're teaching at a much higher level than that. So, well, and also nice segue. I think we can talk about let's move on to something a little bit different. The high school experience, the high school sports versus the club. Tom, this is something you wanted. You mentioned you thought it was good to address. We all see that. You talked about the Little Saints team or whatever it might be, and I'm seeing that now with my oldest. One of my granddaughters playing in softball. And there's teams that are from schools, definitely from schools. She plays on a Cedar Rapids Kennedy feeder program, but then all of a sudden you see the Storm or the Reds, and they're all-star teams, or I don't call them all-star teams. That's what they do tryouts, and they do cut players. They want the elite, they want the best. What is the approach of these school-based athletics compared to the approach of these club-based athletics?
Well, I think I'd like to share that it in my eyes, it really isn't about, high school versus club. It's about high school and club's partnership, right? I mean, we all have one thing in common, and that is we have young people that we have been called to help develop. We develop them physically, we develop them emotionally, we develop them competitively, and we are responsible for their best interest. And how do we work together? If what we're trying to get our coaches to do is different than what a club organization or outside school organization is different, we need to get together and figure out, okay, how are we going to merge this? How are we going to because we really do have a common goal, and it should be, right, is the development of those kids. And I think anything we can do to connect to each other and share some of the same messages, because here's the deal, right? If we hear this all the time, if in an unfortunate situation in a family where there's a divorce, right, or even in a family where there's not, kid goes to mom, gets one answer, kid goes to dad, gets another answer. Well, if kids are hearing one thing in school-based sports and they're hearing something else in club sports or out of school sports, they're confused. And sometimes parents can be confused by that. So the more unified the message can be in education-based sports as well as club-based sports and whether that's recreational, developmental, elite training, whatever it is, the more that message can be unified, the easier it is for everybody to understand. And I know as a high school coach, when they come from club, here's the message they've been getting, and they're getting the same message here. I don't know how you guys feel about that. I would say way easier said than done. Way easier said than done. But I think it's at least a goal that we should shoot for.
Yeah, I'll speak on it from my perspective because I am the club side of it. You know what I mean? And for the longest time, private versus public or club versus school has had this reputation of basically being rivals. And so when I started this back in 2020, I'll just speak from my perspective. I knew it's a losing battle if you want to go to battle with the schools because those kids are getting playing time from the football's perspective from their school coaches. So I don't know why you try to fight that battle. So I made it a point to meet with every coach in the Des Moines area and say, hey, I don't want to be an adversary. I just want to be in a partnership with you. I want to be supplemental for your kids that are looking for anything extra so that they can come back to you better. And that looks like a lot of different ways. That's how to act, and whether it be athleticism development or skill development in the football world. But I do see a lot of people doing it the opposite way, tearing their kids away from the schools, which is bad for everybody. It's bad for the player. It's bad for the club's reputation, whatever. But I agree. Like the way that we go about our program is there's no cuts. I mean, hey, I want to help every single kid that I possibly can develop. You never know. This kid might not look like much right now, but he could be. He could be in 3 or 4 years. And even if he isn't, you know what? He could have a much more successful life with what's being taught. But I agree. I think the way that it needs to be done is in a collaborative effort for the kids' sake, which is easier said than done. But if you're really truly about the kid, you got to do the groundwork and gaining the coaches and the school's trust so that you say, hey, my club is different. I'm going to make sure that the kids are at every school function you want, acting the way you want, doing it the way you want, and then it can be successful.
Yeah, I don't disagree with either one of you guys. I think you're right on. We are not. I wouldn't consider us a club organization because we cut no kids. Any kid that wants to play, regardless if they can afford it or not, we will find a way to have them play. So everybody plays. We go into a community like Tripoli. We meet with their high school football coach, and we tell them we want you to be involved, and we want you to tell the youth coaches what you want. It's your program. We're just providing it for the high schools. So we want them to have a lot of say in our YSF youth program for that community. And yeah, I think you guys are right. The tough thing about club sports, especially at the lower level, is when kids start to get cut. I have parents who will call me and say, hey, they didn't make the basketball team or the baseball team because they got cut. Do you think that's fair? Well, I have no, every club has their own rules and stuff. We don't cut anybody. So yeah, easier said than done, like you guys said.
I think the high school, it's a little bit different in team sports like football or even maybe basketball. I know it has a little bit of both, and football obviously does too. I was thinking more along the lines of something you see an athlete, a high school athlete that doesn't participate in swimming or a sport like that. They because they're participating with their club team, and that's where their focus is. I think you've seen it in volleyball, maybe a little bit, maybe more so with some of those individual sports like swimming. I guess we haven't seen it in track yet. We got the kid up at Western Butte that probably could start his own academy with the way he's running. But do you see that, Tom? I mean, when in the high school, on sports like that, like swimming, and sometimes I guess even volleyball a little bit, where the kids decide, I'm not playing for my high school team because I'm going to play for my club team.
I don't think it's widespread, JR. I think we see pockets of it, and I think usually where we see it is maybe swimming, maybe tennis, maybe baseball in rare occasions, and then soccer, because there are some elite soccer programs that are that I think kids want to be a part of. And because, Iowa's a little unique, we play soccer in the spring. Most states play it in the fall. And unfortunately in the spring is where a lot of the elite club programs are running their seasons. And so sometimes kids will skip their high school season in order to play it in those high level clubs. But again, it's not widespread. I think there's still this feeling of pride to represent your community and be a part of that. Plus, to me, it has a little bit to do with, where's your social circle? If my buddies are the guys I'm playing ball with, why would I not want to do that in my school with them? And so I think that's why it's not as widespread as maybe people would fear it would get. But I still think the high school scene is relevant. And I think kids really do appreciate being able to represent their school. I mean, in what other program can you walk down the hall and hundreds of kids are saying great game last night, or we're rooting for you and good luck tonight. There's something to be said for that.
Yeah, an interesting thing. My cousin's the head softball coach at Baylor University, and he has mentioned Iowa several times because the girls play softball in the summer. And he said, we don't recruit the state of Iowa because we're always going to these during the summer, going to these club tournaments. But in Iowa, I think, Tom, you still see a lot of girls that play for their high schools, and they'll play their club games as well on the weekends. But in Iowa, just being unique, he's like he said, if we don't see an Iowa team at a tournament on the weekend, we may not see those Iowa girls. But like you had said, I think, Tom, you said that earlier, that they're going to find you. If you're good enough, the college coaches are going to find you. So.
Well, let's talk about that high school experience a little bit. We're kind of growing up as we in our conversation. We've gone from youth to the high school now, but you guys are all, I think, you've coached, you've played, or you've administered and coached and high school sports. What is so special about being part of that high school program?
I think it's pride. I mean, when I played high school football and baseball, I was all about, being with my buddies. I mean, my buddies were the sports guys. They played football, they played baseball. Like Tom said, homecoming was always a big deal to be on the football team, walking down the halls, playing on a Friday night. Friday night lights. I don't think any of us here on this panel would disagree. There's nothing like playing Friday nights under the lights in front of your hometown. I mean, there's not a whole lot to do, and it seems like when there's a home football game, everybody in the community, they come out to the football field to watch the high school games. So when I played, and even when I coached, I just loved coaching high school level. Those kids, give them some sense of pride, and I loved playing for my high school team, and I would not have given that up for anything. I would do it all over again.
I think that for most sports, it's the purest form of the game. From my perspective in football, especially now with NIL, I mean, college gets very businessy, politicky. Professionally speaking, very much so. A lot of stuff going on behind the scenes there, but kind of like Jim said, growing up with your friends since you were in kindergarten, playing with those guys. Some of my best football memories, I can still talk to those guys about. Comeback victories, a school like Tripola who wasn't traditionally, successful at football. We dropped to 8-man. We do really well. My last couple of years, I mean, those are memories I'll last for a lifetime, and I'll share with those guys. And I never once had to think about, like, I never thought about having to be cut. Or some of the things as you get older and are playing a sport that you have to worry about, job security, stuff like that.
That's a great point. And I think, for most kids, the closest they're ever going to get to that experience of being, at Kinnick Stadium or in at US Bank or whatever is Friday night under the lights with people in the stands. My middle son runs volleyball tournaments around the country, and I love the experience he has with that. But even he will say, there's a group of parents watching that court. There's not 800 people in the stands watching it. The focus is not on that particular competition at that moment in the venue. There's 48 courts going on, at the same time. In high school, there's one venue, one court, two crowds, two teams, and it's just a different experience. And I think that's why it's really so special. And I'll give you an example. People ask me all the time, "What's your favorite moment in coaching?" And they expect me to say, "Oh, we came back from 02 to win 3-2 back in the year 1993 or 92." It's not. It was a year that one of the players from the team at Wahlert, who, while I was coaching, I was lucky enough that it was the first team that won a state title with me as the coach. She called, said, "A bunch of us are going to be back over Thanksgiving. Can we get together in the gym maybe and just share stories?" You bet. So they all came, but you know what they came with? Scrapbooks, pictures, and you know what else they came with? Their kids. So their kids are running around the gym, same gym they trained in. And here they were looking at pictures and laughing about stuff and telling stories. And to me, that's what high school is. Carter, you said it best. You're creating memories that are going to last an absolute lifetime. So, and in Iowa, we're very, very lucky because we have a lot of small communities. And I think it's even more intensified in those small communities that you get back together and that experience gives you the opportunity to say, "Remember when," and I just can't say enough about it.
I think that goes on even as we age even older than that. We still get together with our old high school buddies and talk about how great we were when we probably weren't. So, but those are good things. So, one of the things we haven't talked about a lot, and it's kind of the elephant in the room. We've mentioned it on and off a little bit, is NIL, and it's even NIL has changed so much, as Carter pointed out, that college experience is completely different. And who knows where it's going to end up, right? But are we seeing this NIL trickle down? I know we've seen it a little bit at the high school level. I don't know if it's widespread personally, but I think we've seen it trickle down into the high schools. Is it trickling down even more that these young players, high school and younger, are they focused on that, or what they can make playing their sport?
Jim, I don't know what you see at that level.
Well, we already, before we got on here, we knew that Carter was the first NIL player in YSF. When his folks gave whether your parents gave you $1 or something for a tackle or something, is that right, Carter?
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
we're not seeing that. We're not seeing any of that at our level as far as people coming in to pay. We are, but there again, like I said, the parents have got that in their minds. I even think the kids have it in their mind. I want to get an NIL deal. So we don't see necessarily that being done here. I'm curious Carter, to hear what Carter and Tom have to say, but certainly our parents and our players are definitely thinking about it. So yeah.
Yeah, I'll speak. I deal with a lot of athletes that are in the recruiting game now, and a couple of them that are high level. And NIL is definitely a part of it. It's in the equation. I don't think it's seeped, at least in Iowa, much deeper than that. I think, you're looking sophomores and above, maybe freshmen. There's a kid from Dowling that's pretty special, getting offers from Alabama and such. I'm sure that he's getting NIL offer type stuff. But like I said, that kind of goes back to the outlier. And it's definitely infiltrating high school. You saw one of the Des Moines athletes have the first NIL deal in high school before the football season opened up, and Jaden McGregory for a back to school thing. I think in Iowa it hasn't quite spread like other states, like in Texas or the bigger football states, but it's becoming a more prevalent thing. It's definitely a more prevalent thing in terms of recruiting. You know what I mean? Like I had a kid who had he had 4 big schools he's trying to choose from, and, this one was a better fit for him, but this school offered much more money. And it's like, as a 17-year-old, those are big life decisions. I don't know if I would have been equipped to make those decisions when I was that age. It's crazy, the direction we're going. I certainly think that more regulations need to be made overall. Obviously, we're in the beginning stages. It's kind of a wild west. Another kid that I know reclassed because he was getting offers, NIL offers now, and he didn't want to wait for another year to see does stock go down? Does he get hurt? That those offers aren't there anymore. So I mean, those are big life changes that are being affected because of NIL.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, Carter. And as far as the high school landscape goes, I think it's, well, let me say this first. Kevin White, back to Kevin. He speaks pretty boldly about this now that he's retired. He said, "I really don't care what people think anymore. I'm going to tell them how it is." And he believes there's no off ramp. This thing is this horse is out of the barn, and it is not going away. So we're going to have to learn how to navigate it. And right now, it's a very difficult and complex landscape to navigate. And when it comes to NIL, I think, unfortunately, the general public lumps 3 things into NIL. One is really NIL, which is how do you use my name, image, and likeness? And I should get some compensation for that if you're going to use my name, image, and likeness. The second is collectives, whether it's the Swarm or whatever it is, that colleges have collectives that can pay, can give athletes benefits. And then the third is now pay for play, where universities can directly pay athletes for being a part of that. In the high school space, only one of those is in Iowa is possible, and that's true NIL. But students in Iowa have always been able to make money. That it's never hurt. So let's say Cooper DeJean. Let's say Cooper DeJean could play guitar, and he was going to be at the VFW hall on Friday night playing music, and everybody knew, oh, it's Cooper, so we're going to go. Well, he was allowed to do that. He's always been allowed to do that. Now in colleges, if you had a scholarship, you could not have an outside job. You could not earn other income if you had that, and so they were kind of handcuffed. And I think that's where NIL release them. But in high school, you've always been able to have your face up on a billboard and say, buy from Billy's Auto Store. As long as you didn't have your school uniform on and you weren't promoting anything like that, as long as you weren't getting $25 for every touchdown or $5 for every tackle, Carter, as long as you weren't getting that, and as long as schools didn't have collectives, because collectives that's undue influence, right? Are you giving that money to every student in your high school? No. Well, if you're not, then that's considered a benefit that goes beyond the general student population. That makes you ineligible. So it's a little different in the high school space. But again, I think if people forget about the real reason their kids are involved in athletics, they can start focusing on money. The other, as an old psych guy, I think most people would understand that when money gets involved, internal motivation can be diminished because you start focusing on the money and stop focusing on, why do I do this to begin with? I love the game. I like being around my friends. I like competing, regardless of what it is. As a football player, Carter, you not only need to be able to, you not only need to like to hit, you have to like to get hit, or else you better get out of this sport, right? So you have all these other reasons why you like to play, and all of a sudden, all that goes over here, and the money becomes the focus. And man, that really changes things dramatically.
Yeah, I really hate that we don't have those athletes anymore that will go to play. I'll just use Carter. You go to play the UNI because that's where you really wanted to play. You were hoping to get a scholarship, and you were going to go play 4 years at UNI, and no one's going to come and take you away. Now, I'm talking with Kurt Ferentz, before, he's like, it's hard because we get Carter in here as a freshman. He does great. The next year, somebody else is taking him away from us because of NIL. And that's where I really have got a problem with it. I think if you go to a university, you have to give them 2 years minimum, and you can't leave till your third year, and then you only get one time to leave. And I've got some other ideas, but they're not going to listen to Jim Miller, that's for sure. So,
Well, we're down to our 5-minute warning, and I did want to talk about this because Carter, you mentioned it a little bit, and also you sent it in an email to me. What are the kids thinking? What are they saying to you? You said you mentioned, Carter, and it's very important for the coaches, the parents, to listen to those kids and hear how the experience is affecting them. And I think it sounds like maybe that we get away from that sometimes, that we're all lost in, hey, I want you to go here, I want you to go to make this money, I want you to go to school here, I want you to be a success, go to the NFL and so I can retire, And what do you guys hearing from the athletes, from the kids?
I'll say there's a couple different coins to it. There's a kid who has been told, or has been on this path to say, I want to play at the next level, and it's just kind of not in the cards for him, and he's almost seen as a failure by his peers and coaches, probably not coaches, but mainly peers, social media, like, oh, he set out on this goal, and for some reason, whether it's just genetically, like he's not big enough or fast enough, it doesn't work out for him, or he's not going to go D1. He could go D3, but he doesn't go D1, so he sees himself as a failure. I think that's one of those. And then there's some where it's like, hey, I really just enjoy playing football. For an example, I got a kid who's one of the top receivers in the state, 2 or 3A. He just loves the game. He doesn't want to play in college. You know what I mean? And he's just loving the game. People are asking all the time, why don't you transfer to a bigger school? You get more exposure. Why don't you want to play college football? And he's like, man, this is it for me. This is just what I want. So I think there's probably a couple more avenues of kids that I see as well. But those are the two most prevalent ones. The third one is the one where it's like, hey, I've been working for this dream, playing at the next level, and I put all this work in, and it ends up working out for them, whether it's D1, D2, FCS, whatever. I think that's the other one. But the ones that get hurt the most, or that I hear the most, are the first two.
Well, when I got put in this position, I took something that I did as a principal and as an AD, and I put a student advisory group together. I mean, my point here was, what do the kids think? I mean, there's 80,000 boys in Iowa playing high school sports. So we maybe should ask them what they think about some of these things. So we have a student advisory committee that Andy Umpton was working with for a while, and now Tyler Lown, our new assistant director, is working with. And we do ask, and quite frankly, they play for a couple reasons. The majority of these 80,000 are playing because they like to play the sport. They're having fun doing it. They're around their friends, and they like the coach. And when I say they like the coach, they like coaches who will challenge them, hold them accountable, work hard at it themselves, etc. And that's why they play. They are exhausted. The demands on their time. You got to remember, I think most of the kids who are involved in high school activities are high achievers. They are not going to let their grades go. They're going to give up two things. They're going to give up sleep, and they're going to give up time with their family. That's it. They're not giving up time with their friends. They're not going to give up time on their studies, and they're not going to give up time on training. And they are exhausted. They want a break. And sometimes that break is, I can tell you that after a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and then back on Tuesday play, and if I gave the kids off on Wednesday, the relief on their faces Tuesday night when I told them was incredible. So they need a break. They ask us, we have a summer buffer, a week off, right? Nobody can do anything in a week. And they're asking us for more. Can we do that in between seasons? Can we do that at different times? And that's where, again, I'd like to get together with outside organizations and say, if schools shut down activities during this time, could you guys agree to shut it down too? Could you guys say, hey, they're not doing anything that week, let's run a special clinic that week. Can we avoid doing that? If we can work together on that, kids will know, you know what, adults do care about us. They all care about us. It's not just one group of people.
Yeah, and all I'm hearing is my kids just want to have fun. It's the parents that worry about the other stuff. They're the ones that are talking about the other stuff. But at the youth level right now, a lot of kids just want to play because they love playing sports. So.
Muted. How's that? I finally muted myself. I finally saw the note that said, hey, mute yourself. You're echoing. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this. This has been, I think, a really interesting discussion. We've kind of bounced around a little bit, and I think that's fine. I mean, we bounced around from the youth to the high school level, and but that's what this is all about. This is talk about the kids who play the sports and why they play it, and what's best for them. I think all three of you have addressed that topic very well, and I do appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us, and have a great rest of the day.
You bet.
Thanks for
Thank you,
having us.
guys. Appreciate it.